Hello, good morning or good afternoon. Welcome everyone to another expert Q&A here at Astro. So this is a pretty special session. We have three C-suite team members from some of the leading revenue management systems in short-term and vacation rental. And we're approaching this session as educational. We want to talk about how revenue management systems can add value to your portfolio or your home, if you're an individual owner, of course, and moving to technology and how that can create efficiencies for you and help you grow your market share. Before we jump into the deck and the questions, and our goal is that it's really interactive, so chat away. We encourage you to chat away in the chat window here. We'll go around the room and intro everyone. Julie, how about we start with you?
Great, thanks, Heather. Excited to be here. So I'm Julie Brinkman. I am the Chief Operating Officer at Beyond Pricing. I've spent my career in software, at least the last 15 years of my career, and you can figure out how old I am. Before that, I was in financial consulting. And I've been at Beyond Pricing now for about 7 months. We are a revenue management system for short-term rental owners and managers. We've historically focused on dynamic pricing and just recently entered into the website and booking engine and channel management business. So excited to be here and have a conversation today.
Thanks. Alex, do you want to go next?
Sure, I'd be happy to. My name is Alex Shartsis. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Perfect Price. We're an AI company focused on pricing, and we actually are probably the most recent entrant to the vacation rental, short-term rental space. We've been at this for about I guess since about holidays of last year. We had a few people show up on our doorstep, and we realized that this was a really interesting application of AI for pricing software. So I've worked with some of the biggest companies in the world across about a dozen industries on pricing, and I'm excited to work with people in this industry.
And then Andrew.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Nice to meet you all. Excited to kind of step through a presentation today. I'm CEO of Wheelhouse, revenue management for the short-term rental space. I think what's going to be fun to discuss today is, Alex, as you're obviously learning too, there's so many interesting challenges for pricing short-term rentals, right? Every single property is unique. There's so many different strategies. How do you even design good data science systems that can help operators and owners kind of perform better, maximize the potential of their business? It's a really interesting, always fun challenge. So excited to dive into today and talk through kind of strategies or tools or things you can leverage to have success.
Okay, we're going to dive in. I'll share my screen here. So maybe I'll share with everyone too. My background, the reason I'm running this panel too is my background is in revenue management and distribution. I grew up more in the hotel side of things, but ultimately revenue management and distribution and this discipline in the lodging industry is really most in its infancy in short-term rental versus other lodging areas. And we're all still learning and figuring it out together. So again, the goal of this is talking about how we turn insights into action using revenue management pricing systems to optimize your business and grow market share. You've met our three panelists, and we're going to dive right in. So we've got this broken out into 3 sections. So the first section here is, technology needs and balancing how do you deploy, your human resources. And then we want to talk about the difference between revenue management systems, what is AI powered versus market intelligence or BI, the data scraping or actual data. So what do you do manually? Do you need technology? And on the left here, through the association, we offer a free 1-week power course. And so as we go through this deck, we're going to draw from some of the highlights in the course that was taught in the month of September. So these 4 areas on the left, we dove into, do you need a system or not? Kind of is the question, like, I'm doing it myself. Do I need a system? Well, when you're talking about what the system can do for you, what are your levels of control? And evaluating where you always know more than the system. So how you manage the system is important. can you have, an automatic alert that allows you to say, if, this change occurs, between now and the next 365 days, I want the system to automatically make an adjustment for me, right? And that saves that human effort of trying to track an action, and the system can do it for you, and you can create that setting. So that's a positive, and a reason why it would make your life easier to have a system. Another one we talk about is seasonal occupancy. So you might say, well, do I really need technology if, the extreme example is I close my home up in the winter. The roads are closed. I don't even have a property. But in the summer months, I'm extremely busy. I have a ton of demand. And the argument here might be, well, you are managing a booking window, right? So maybe it's important that you actually have settings and systems in place to start managing that high demand that comes in 90 days prior to arrival or heading into that busy time period, right? You're managing not just say that in that 3 month.
And I wouldn't limit it to just price. I mean, also there's your length of stay and other considerations. I think as a second best, and I apologize for the background noise. I'm living in one of these in coronavirus land with some construction going on. But I would say the second best thing is it can give you something to react to. So instead of sort of starting from a blank canvas and trying to think like, how do I come up with a comp set, or how do I, what is a good price for my property? It can give you a recommendation that you might think is high or low, but at least you have a starting point now, and it'll give you the tools. All the RMSs out there give you the tools to dial that price up or down depending on what you think is acceptable for your market. So I think when you get to more properties, it becomes, in our view, a no-brainer. As you said, it's 2, 3, 4 times more work, even if the properties are right next door to each other. If one of them booked 6 months in advance and the other one's still sitting there 3 months out, you still have to make decisions. So, for us, the big thing that an RMS does, if I can sort of sum it up, is it gives you the intelligence that you need to make those decisions. It gives you intelligent pricing recommendations. It gives you the transparency about what's going on in your market and where those pricing recommendations came from, so you can have an opinion about it. And then it gives you control over it, so you can make changes if you want to, or you can let it go. But you can make changes just in high season, or just in low season, or just this weekend. And I think that a lot of the things that obviously the way you judge it, the advantage is you end up making more money, right? At the end of the day, you're spending less time, you're automating a lot of the things that you'd have to do by hand. So, you're sleeping better at night, right? Those complicated last minute stays, they're happening, they're getting adjusted. You don't have to remember on Saturday morning. You can just have your breakfast and your coffee, and the system does it for you. So I think there are a lot of advantages. It's not necessarily right for everybody, but that's how we look at it.
No, that's great. And I think that is a good point, how the technology can be scary, but thinking in terms of what you said, that it's once you have it in place, that it can make your life easier. And getting through that setup, or kind of over that hurdle of like, oh, this technology is scary, am I losing control, and realizing how much better your life can be. All right, then let's go to you, Julie, to round this one out.
Awesome. Well, first of all, I just have to say I'm very excited for using the term RMS in our industry. The notion of a revenue management system in short-term rentals isn't something that's been around for decades and decades, like it has been in the hotel industry. So that in and of itself, I'm very excited about. And as you homeowners thinking about leveraging technology to optimize your investment, to Andrew's point, the investment you've made in a short-term rental is a unique investment. This inventory is incredibly diverse. And so what an RMS can do really comes down to basically 3 things. It can simplify a bunch of data points, a bunch of complex data points, to make a very clear-cut recommendation on price. It can do so quickly. So, also as Andrew mentioned, demand might change overnight. There may be a solar eclipse that happens in your market that you might not be aware of. The algorithm will pick that up and show you the change that needs to happen and make it for you. And then I think most importantly is a good RMS will also show you what happened as a result of these changes. What is happening to your portfolio or your property relative to the market? How are you performing relative to what you did last year? Changes are only good insofar as if you know that they were good or bad relative to what happened in your space, at your property, at a certain point in your market. So I think those are three big benefits, in addition to what Alex and Andrew have mentioned, that I would point to as a reason to invest in an RMS.
No, that's great. You started to edge into what we do want to get into later too, the like, well, how do I know if it's working? Yeah. You know, am I making more money than I would have had I not had a system? And so we definitely want to do more on that here in a minute. But I'll keep moving to stay on the next question of just the technology and go to this one. So let's say I do have an RMS. Do I need more market insight or other data? And I think it can be a little confusing, you know, well, if I'm getting this data and I use this data to manually make rate changes, how should I navigate all this? Do I need more? And, you know, is this like another product than the automated rate recommendations that you're getting from an RMS? So maybe Alex, we start with you on this one.
Sure. So I think it depends. It depends on how much, you know, how, if you think about, you know, autonomous driving, right? How much do you want to hold the wheel and how much do you want to let it drive for yourself? So there's some people that really have a low tolerance, just don't want to spend time on managing their rates. And in that case, you know, as Julie just mentioned, you know, just looking at your performance is a great way. You don't really need to go beyond the RMS. You can look at your performance and get a sense for, hey, this is outperforming what I did last year. This is outperforming my peers. And so you can feel pretty confident that, you know, you're getting enough out of it and your investment in terms of your time is really low. And that's great for some people. What we find is that investing a little bit in your time and in extra data will lead to a really big payoff, because you're always going to know a little bit more about your market than a computer could ever figure out on its own, unaided. And this fits with a lot of the AI research. So when you look at all the chess games, all the Go games, a human and a computer always beat a human or a computer playing by themselves. So, you know, we think investing a little bit is a really, of your time is a really big advantage. So then it becomes, well, what data are you looking at? And so in our platform, we really show you what the comparables are. You can go in and look at price curves of similar units in your market that the AI thinks are really similar to yours. So you don't really need to go to an outside, you know, data source or click around Airbnb. It's all brought to you right there. You know, I know others here have taken different approaches there. Another resource that we find is really great for people is key data, because it gives you really accurate competitive data on your market. So it's not going to talk to you about individual units, but it will give you a sense of how your neighborhood, how you know, 2 bedrooms in your neighborhood are doing. So you can get a sense for how you benchmark against competition and what other people are seeing. So those are the 2 things that we think are worth the most time. The last piece of advice I'd give is don't do too much, right? If you spend your entire Saturday, you know, poring over the data, and you're already using an RMS to give you price recommendations, that you might get burned out on that, and you might eventually either make mistakes, you know, try to outthink your RMS and outthink the recommendations, or you might just get burned out and not want to do it anymore because you have better things to do on your Saturday.
Yeah, analysis paralysis. Like there's an overdoing it too. I like what you said. I just noted, you know, the research kind of grabbing inspiration from other industries or other research in, like you mentioned, the chess game, you know, human versus computer, but the concept that in all of these different scenarios cross industry, it's the human plus the computer that always outperforms either just the human or just the computer. That was really interesting to kind of have folks wrap their head around or think about. Okay, do you want to go next, Julie?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, plainly said, if you have an RMS, do I need more market insights or data sources? Any RMS worth their weight will have market insights and data sources for you. Their pricing recommendations should be based on their ability to understand the market. And at Beyond Pricing, we not only rely on market to show us where demand is happening, but we also think that you should understand how and why we're making those pricing recommendations. So we reveal that information to you, showing you why certain adjustments are being made, either for day of week or change in demand or other factors that will affect that price on that day. You can see the comparables, you can see the data that we're scraping from Airbnb or VRBO. And the other factor we want to take into account is all of our own proprietary data. So we have over 500,000 listings globally, and we're able to bubble up, aggregate, anonymize that data, and make very specific recommendations that go beyond what we'd be able to get outside of just scraping. Because scraping can lead you down potentially the wrong path as you don't really understand the intricacies of occupancy, for example. So long story short, I think your tool should have it all in one, and your pricing recommendations should absolutely take in market performance, market insights, and you should have all of that at your fingertips.
So you're at Beyond, your thought is more of, though your core product is the algorithm-driven rate recommendation, you're also trying to bring additional data, I think is what you just said. Is that a separate product, or is that something that's part of what you're providing?
No, that's a great question, Heather. So we have an insights product. It's actually not a revenue generating product, i.e. it's free. So you can connect your accounts directly to our insights product, which will show you all of your cluster level, market level comparables and see how you're performing relative to the market. So that's just part of the suite that we offer. And then you can decide whether you want to be a paying subscriber to Beyond Pricing by upgrading to the pricing software. But that's, we believe having it all in one makes not only having the insights at your fingertips really useful, but the ability to take action as a result of what you're seeing.
Yeah, and just to show the counterpoint to that, right, going back to Alex, some might argue, well, can you do both really well? And the idea that you're offering this as one, whereas I think, Alex, what you were saying is that key data may be I don't know, let's go back to that and have you say a little bit more about that, if that's all right. Sounds like there's kind of two different things you can build out.
To me, yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on what tool serves the user best, right? So, I agree that, you want the most data and the most intelligence to go into the pricing recommendations, and that's something that we, absolutely believe in. I think it depends on what some people relate. It depends on the level of sophistication of the user. Some people relate to different data in different ways. I mean, if I let our PhD AI engineers build the dashboard that they would want to see, I wouldn't understand it. Nobody would understand it. Right? I mean, it would be really, really scientific, and that's not going to appeal to the person who just wants to drink their coffee on Saturday, and look at a couple numbers and feel like they understood what's going on in the market. So, a lot of these tools aren't mutually exclusive. As Julie was just saying, there's a free tool and Beyond that you can use for market data, and that's a great option. And there are other options out there that, that I haven't mentioned that have supplied either, scrape data or other types of data. But I think really it's a question of, it's not a big investment. All these things are free to try to figure out what works best for you. As a homeowner, right? What tool presents the data in the way that you want? There's some people that are going to want to download things and put it in Excel and monkey around with it themselves, and that's great. That's their style. That's definitely not most people. And there are other people that like our approach, where the AI calculates your comps. It uses proprietary data. It shows it all to you on one page, so you don't have to go anywhere else. And for some people, that's enough. I think Heather, somebody like you who is familiar with how hotels do this. I mean, they use a lot of data sources, right? They're paying, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for different data sources every year, just to go put them in Excel and crunch them themselves. So there's no necessarily right way to do it. It's sort of what's right for you as the homeowner. And there are a lot of tools out there to choose from.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then to round this one out, the kind of the difference between the RMS or the business intelligence and getting that extra data. Let's go to you, Andrew.
Sure, a lot of great points already, so I'll keep mine relatively short. Definitely agree with Julie. A full-fledged RMS is going to start to include that market report, comp set, event data, et cetera, all the things that would give you the ability to really understand kind of what's behind recommendations, right? Just give people the transparency that they need to be able to, again, blend their strategy with the recommendations of a pricing engine. However, I think there are some tools, we mentioned key data. Two other tools that are pretty well known are Transparent, AirDNA. They're all really well-run companies, good folks who put a lot of passion into these business intelligence tools, which I think suit different use cases better. So, for example, if you are going to be making investments in properties, I would say Transparent, AirDNA. I'm most familiar with those tools. They've over-indexed probably around that particular profile. So, kind of different use cases. If you're looking to manage a property, obviously an RMS could be paired with business intelligence tools. It's never going to hurt. It never hurts to get a second opinion. Alternatively, if you're making an investment, there's some really strong tools out there. AirDNA, Transparent, key data, all those can be helpful as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you're in the trying to evaluate more like the investment value forecasting, annual income, things like that versus the day-to-day optimization of price. Two different use cases. That's a good point. Okay, I'll keep moving. So the next one is about all the levers, so in the capabilities. So for those owners that have a PMS where they're distributing to multiple channels through this PMS, they may have a few levers in their PMS that are, I'm going to set a 2-night minimum, or if my home isn't sold in 7 days, I want to discount 10%, and these little levers may exist. There's no necessarily intelligence helping you decide what to do, but it's a lever that's available. And so with the RMS, it's really taking those levers to the next level. So we just wanted to quickly mention a few and then go into just discussing how these come together within an RMS, or the direction too of the industry and what an RMS may be capable of doing. So length of stay or day of week settings, gap or orphan nights. This term seems to be interchangeable, that idea that you have a 4-night stay and a 4-night stay with 1 or 2 nights in between. And if you typically have a 3-night minimum, do you want to, allow those 2 nights to book, or even that 1 night to book and take a 1-night stay? Then there's the comp set benchmarking, which we talked about a little bit already. The pace comparisons, how are you doing same time versus last year? Forecasting, is the system helping you give an estimate of what it thinks you should, be able to earn in a month? And then seasons and events is a big one too, right? Making sure you're optimizing those, super high demand periods. And from there, we could be missing some. These were just a few that we touch on in the course. But our question here is, knowing you have all these levers or talking about how to use these levers, this goes back to what you mentioned in the beginning, Julie. How do I know if it's working for me, if I'm configuring everything right? And maybe we'll start with you, Julie.
Sure. So, I think in its most simple form, technology should do maybe one of 3 things. At least one of 3 things. It should either make you money, or save you time. And as you evaluate your RMS or your pricing technology, you want to evaluate if it's hitting 1, 2, or all 3 of those. At Beyond, we like to do all 3. So the first thing is, how can I make you money? A lot of folks, they'll look at their portfolio performance year over year, which is one data point. But I think if 2020 has shown us anything, is that your portfolio year over year might not look so great, but it could look pretty great relative to the market. So we want to not only look at how your revenue is performing year over year, but how you're performing relative to the market. For instance, Seattle last year, they changed their regulations with Airbnbs and short-term rentals. The market declined 20%. We saw our customers, their revenue declined, but only 10%. So if you are able to make up revenue relative to the market, you should feel pretty good about it. In terms of saving time, we touched on this in the first question, Heather. A lot of these changes in demand happen very quickly. And so you need to make sure that you are staying on top of not only events, but cancellations, additions of events. That's what software is actually really good at, not only recommending those changes, but also making those changes for you. The last piece is save you money. So how can I make you money and save you money at the same time? back to the last question, there are a plethora of tools that you can use that you could stitch together to become a property or a proper revenue management system. We like to throw it all in one, give you access to the market data, show you why we're making those changes, and then make the changes for you. So that's, if you went and bought all the full functionality of Beyond across all the different tools, you'd probably spend thousands of dollars a month versus just, our subscription price.
Okay, thanks. How about we go to you, Alex, next?
Sure. Yeah, I think I tend to agree that the same three things, right? Making money, which looks a lot like saving money, depending on how you frame it, and saving time are really good goals. I think just getting down to how the technology is working for you. A lot of people aren't aware. I'll start with saving time. A lot of people aren't aware of how much time they spend on pricing. And so you mentioned using the RMS versus the PMS. Some PMSs are really terrible when it comes to pricing, right? They just make it difficult to be strategic about your pricing or change your prices. One of our good partners, great software, really, really capable. A lot of people choose it for its revenue management system. They have a multi-month course to be able to figure out how to use the revenue management system in the PMS. Whereas I think everybody here can agree, you sign up for our software and that first day you'll be successful, right? You're not, that's our focus. We've done a pretty good job of making it easy to get started and decide if it's working for you. So I think from a time-saving standpoint, it's important to figure out, do an audit of your staff for your time and just understand, like, hey, in a week, how much time am I spending on pricing? Because you might not even realize whether it's keeping you up at night or the first thing you do in the morning and you think it takes 2 minutes, but it really takes 30, how much time you're spending on it. I think to us, the most important thing is making you money or saving you money, depending on how you look at it, and getting those prices right for you and getting those recommendations and the automation to work for you. And the best way to look at that is either comparing to your properties the year prior, or obviously, as Julie mentioned, 2020 is kind of an odd year. So looking at what else is going on in the market. And nothing really beats just, an assessment of, hey, these are comparables that are really similar to my property, and I'm outperforming them or I'm underperforming them, and by how much. And I think whether you use our tools to do that, whether you use a third-party tool like Key Data, however you get comfortable with that data, it's a great thing to do. I think some of the people that we work with are so successful that they don't even feel like they need to look at it. They look at their basic reporting and they see they made a lot more money over the course of the month. Obviously 2020 is kind of a weird year, but you can, I think that's not an uncommon experience with implementing an RMS for the first time. We've seen it in every industry we've worked in, where you don't need to get out the spreadsheet and do the calculation, because it's just like, wow, this is a lot more than I made last year. Like, I don't remember July being this good. So that's how we would recommend thinking about it.
Yeah, I love this conversation about what is the market doing versus what are you doing? And we're seeing markets outperform what they did last year, right? So I know, Julie, you just used the analogy of, well, if it's down 20 and you're down 10, you're winning. And Alex, what you brought up, I think, is the other one too, that, if you're outperforming, you're feeling good about it. But if you want to even go that step further and say, okay, I did better than last year. But if you want to say, well, did I do it did I optimize as much revenue as I could,
Right.
That extra benchmark of the comp set or the market to say, market grew 20, I grew 30,
Right.
and be able to say that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. We're seeing people
Go ahead.
in other markets like the Pacific Northeast. I'm sorry, the Northeast, not Pacific Northeast. Oh, and the Pacific Northwest, where the regulations haven't turned against people, and people are having more reservations in September than they had in July. Right, and July was a record, and September's an even bigger record, and so it's a really weird market out there, and adjusting is tough.
And I think one of the core messages too is, now more than ever, the consumer demand for this type of inventory is so high that there is money to be made. So really making sure you're set up to capture it. Basically, it's just a really interesting time. Yeah. Who would ever have thought September would be better than July in a vacation destination? So yeah, Andrew, let's round this one out with you.
All right, it's fun going last.
Well, we can
So
go first
I
on
guess
the
a
next
couple
one.
ways I would think of. So I guess the way we've always thought about RMS or revenue management is probably a bit of a misnomer, right? In the sense that when someone partners with Wheelhouse or any of our companies here, we recognize that we're actually taking over a lot of the financial controls of your business, right? We're partnering with you to drive success of your business. We're updating your prices every single day. That's actually a really big commitment. So of course, this is actually a scary thing. And I think what RMSs can do well, what we all do well, is we give people controls through various settings to come in and set all the controls that Heather, you mentioned on the previous page. Of course, the methodologies and kind of performance metrics are really important to know how you're performing against the market. And then I think a really important thing too is it is tooling that is really important for your business. So making sure that good customer support is available to get people over that trust gap and really know how to use the tools to their full impact is powerful, right? I have no doubt that a revenue management system, us across the board, can help people improve revenue. No doubt about it, right? We can update prices based on demand. It's not a big leap of faith to actually say we can do better, but maximizing the value of what any of us could do is really going to be tied to that interaction between the tooling or the customer support that gets you into a really good position. So just want to stress that we all recognize that this stuff can be pretty scary, handing your revenue over to AI or ML or whatever machine you hand it over to, right? It still takes you and it still takes the customer support team to drive success, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good point. The customer support part, though it shouldn't take a ton of time to learn because you're dealing with somebody's price. That's no joke, right? And bookability. And so when somebody wants help, they're going to want to have that help. Yeah, pretty quickly.
Learning how to use the tool is relatively easy. Setting the perfect strategy is relatively complex. And there's so many nuances to setting strategy, so much predicated on what your goals are with your business or what you might uniquely know about what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. That was great. Okay, we can go into the last session here, part 3. This one is really fun for me because I actually don't like how this is just a moving target. It's fun to watch. And this is about how do you take rational pricing, and tie that to promotion, marketing, merchandising, and that they're acknowledging these are different things, and that lowering price alone is not a form of promotion. So I have some screenshots here we'll go to, but in general, the idea that, promotions are things that you can do. What I'm talking about here is, the LOS discount, tagging, it's a last minute discount, reflecting the slash through of the price. And are you actually able to track that it was because it had a slash through that you converted it, or because you ran that offer, you had better page placement on VRBO or Airbnb? And we'll show some screenshots of that in a second. And that in some cases, maybe there's an API capability that comes out of your PMS, or maybe not, and that the channels have different promotional API capabilities. The other capability would be your own booking engine. If you're using a PMS that gives you your own booking engine to drive direct book, you could have different promotional book direct advantages in that engine. So just all those ways you can do that. Obviously, then the next one is just general merchandising. So we see these questions a lot from owners. Well, how do I know, like, if I add a hot tub, how much more can I charge? The idea that, and if you have one, making sure you're merchandising it properly, and how that listing, promotional listing, and also like tightening up the listing to target things that are important. The other one is pet friendly. That's a really good one. Or cancel policy, which I think Julie mentioned earlier. How do these things impact conversion? Obviously, we know guest reviews, and then talking just Airbnb or VRBO, that's super host or premier status. So based on what an RMS can do and all of this other stuff, how does it all come together? And we just wanted to show some examples. My understanding is Airbnb, I think this is rolled out everywhere. Maybe someone on the chat can confirm, like across all markets, this ability to have all of these levers to change discounts in Airbnb, and that the tagging example here on the right. And then VRBO, also there was an announcement recently that they did draw from Expedia promotional capability and now have some new opportunity here. You'll see that new listing 20% off on the left, and then this last minute deal tag on the right. And exactly how that feeds their algorithm and page placement is, not necessarily super clear, but let's talk about this. So how should I manage and balance RMS pricing recommendations with merchandising and promotions? And Andrew, let's start with you.
Sweet. Okay. Yeah, all the marketplaces are obviously actually competing to sell your supply. It's a really good thing for your business. They're all going to try different things, such as the strike throughs and other promotions that you saw there. Obviously, those channels are a great partner for you. The way we think about revenue management is we've always said that the market is the ultimate source of truth, meaning that bookings over time will tell you what your property is worth. And the really interesting challenge about the short-term rental space is because you have these assets that have so many different amenities, such as pools, porches, barbecue, etc. All of those play into your price, and over time we can discern the value of those different amenities at a location by location level. So, for example, I always like to say that a pool in Miami is worth a lot more than a pool in North Dakota, and parking in San Francisco is worth a lot more than it is in Minnesota as well, right? And that pool on the 4th of July is also worth more than it is on December 4th. So, what an RMS can do really well is look at how you're booking against your comp set, your markets, your neighborhood, etc. Use all your historical data to come up with really good recommendations, and then we can give you a breakdown by amenity of what's driving your performance, right? Another way to think about it is your photo order does matter. Think of your shoppers as experienced shoppers, meaning in the summertime, they're going to want to see a photo of the pool as your first or second photo. In the winter, they're going to want to see a picture of a fireplace or warm cup of coffee. So those merchandising decisions that an RMS actually doesn't control, but you, the owner, can control. I would just urge you to really learn those marketplaces and what they're doing to kind of showcase your product, and then think about how and when you're merchandising to consumers, and really that they're buying an experience. So think about your photo order from that perspective of what's going to drive a purchase decision. What's the story I want my customer to tell in their head as they're looking at the property?
So let's also talk about I'm showing the slash through, right? Like I see this value in getting last minute deal, right, on the channel. And I have to go into the channel based on like maybe my PMS integration. I have to go into the channel and like set that up. Can you talk about, well, what does that mean versus the price I just got, say, from Wheelhouse? That the recommendation comes in, and that I'm then discounting further, right, on top of that? With this
the specific posted price there, I mean, if you're using Wheelhouse would have posted the price that wasn't slashed through, right? Airbnb, it looks like they're experimenting with, hey, if we put the slash through as $20 higher, $50 higher, does that drive a conversion? That's my assumption. I actually don't know. I don't know specifically what they're testing with that particular display. Or maybe someone is after we posted a price, maybe they are providing a discount on top of that. But that could be some sort of control based on, basically the way to think about it is we post prices. The merchandising decisions are made by the marketplaces. So for example, you might say, hey, for a 7-day length of stay, apply a 20% discount. Whether Airbnb is how they're choosing to display it, I actually don't know on a market by market level how they're making that decision. Julie, Alex, maybe you know specifically how they're making that merchandising call. But,
Julie, yeah, why don't we go to you? No, I think, and it's changing all the time, right? So
yes. And I don't know that Airbnb is going to give you that information either to show you like views and clicks and conversions, right? So I don't, I think you could test it. You can test the experience. You can test what it's like to being a guest and walking through that. You can test, slashing through a certain week versus not, and see what response you get. I do like that we're talking about pricing relative to an overall marketing and merchandising strategy, because price is just one component. As Andrew mentioned, it's about how your property looks, what order the photos are in, what a guest is perceiving your property to have relative to your competition. The other thing I'll note is, Airbnb and VRBO are incredible at what they do, which is driving supply to your properties. The other consideration you might want to make is, how are you yourself marketing your property? Do you have your own website and booking engine? As you have return guests and you're building up your book of business, you want to take control of that whole story. So use your Airbnb and VRBO connections to build your business, but then make sure that you're capturing that return business with your own website and booking engine, when you can really control how you're promoting and merchandising your inventory.
One of the things that on that note, Julie, like the display, and I kind of wanted to go back to what you said, Andrew, just to be clear for the audience. The price that's recommended by the RMS is distributed, obviously. It may be directly to the channel if you don't have a PMS, or via the PMS if you have one. But when you go into the channel and you trigger an intentional like extra discount, my understanding then is that you have to be prepared. You're now saying, I'm going to take the lower rate than what the RMS recommended. So this balance of where you've added further. The other thing, though, I think, that does get you merchandising is if you click on, I'll go back here, if you were to click on this, there's kind of a little pop-up that comes up. I don't know if you can see my arrow on like the slasher of the 236 to the 124 that might say this price is on average, 40% lower than the previous 60 days. And the idea that even your RMS, a change or a setting can trigger some type of merchandising, but it's not necessarily intentional on your part, and it's just part of like how they're feeding their algorithmic display.
Well, I'll get a little more specific here. So for this thing, you can, if you actually go back, sorry.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So to my knowledge, on all of our platforms, you can control length of stay discounts. So say you had a 7-day stay or 30-day stay, you could come into Wheelhouse or Beyond or other platforms and say, hey, 20% off if someone books 7 days. You could, and you could have a last minute discount applied, and you could have other discounts applied as well, right? You could actually control all of those things, and the RMS would post that price. Mm-hmm. In that case, the posted price that someone would pay you would be here 124, but there might have been a bunch of discounts already applied, and I don't know. What I don't know is what Airbnb's decision is to show for that price. They wouldn't necessarily know why we're posting a particular price. They could know it's our length of stay discount, et cetera, but you could apply your own custom rate. So this is their merchandising decision. The pricing could be controlled by the RMS.
And I guess just building on that, Andrew, is, this looks like you're controlling the price in Airbnb versus your RMS. Know that their incentives aren't going to be directly aligned with yours. Their incentive is volume and occupancy versus ADR and revenue. So I would just caution using Airbnb only to manage your pricing.
Definitely.
Yeah, and similarly, I think VRBO, there's this other merchandising that I think it's new, right? So it's testing it too and figuring out how it works, or how a price change in the RMS might trigger merchandising or not. But let's go to you, Alex, to round out this one.
Yeah, I mean, I want to echo everything that's been said. I think that it really is one of the core tenets of pricing, and we've done pricing in a lot of different industries, from gas stations to rental cars, is, do people want what you're selling, right? And so if you put that pool out for your December shopper, they don't want that. That's, it's not going to resonate with them. Some things are more difficult, like a hot tub isn't something you can just, change a picture of. Installing a hot tub is a big decision. But I think core to the, price management is really looking at your merchandising and your marketing holistically. And price is, just as everybody's already said, one component of that. I think that two things kind of strike me as worth mentioning. One is the notion of channel management. So if you're not adding 15% to your Airbnb or VRBO prices, like most people do that, and that's something that's worth considering. And that's not an RMS feature. That's something that's built into your PMS or your channel manager in most cases. But grossing up your pricing so that you're in the same place, you're getting the same daily rate whether that person books direct or books on a channel is a really key strategy to success. A lot of industries you can't do that in, like hotels, you can't do that to Expedia, but you can in this industry, and it's something that's really worth taking advantage of. And then, thinking about how you're managing your pricing throughout the year, throughout the booking window. A lot of people, there's a company that isn't on this panel that was really advocating dropping the price during coronavirus. And it bothered me because when people are on lockdown, it goes back to like, they don't want what you're selling, right? It doesn't matter what price you offer your property at. If you're not allowed to leave your home or leave your county, nobody's going to pay it because there's no demand. And so I think we saw things spring back pretty rapidly in April and May because demand came back and it was just gone before. So I think looking at it holistically, getting ahead of it, understanding your booking curve, using an RMS so that you're filling those bookings at the peak times, getting the most rate you can, that's the best thing you can do. And whether especially, I would just say, not to make, difficult predictions, but 2021 is probably going to be a pretty strong year for domestic travel and for vacation rental. And so, there hopefully is less of a need to do heavily promotional pricing. And then the last thing is, think about the customer you get with that pricing, right? Julie mentioned when you're building up your business and you have that person come in through a channel, making sure you keep that relationship and invite them back. First off, that's how the biggest businesses are built, or through those repeat customers. And the person loyal to the channel looking for that last minute deal might not be likely to be a repeat customer versus the family planning their annual family reunion or their annual getaway. And so think about who that customer is and think about maintaining them. And remember that there's as much value for you as the host or the owner in that relationship with the previous customer as is for them. We've talked a bunch of times about how every property is different, and that creates risk. That's one of the big values of Airbnb and VRBO, is reducing the risk for the renter. And so if they've already stayed at your property, it's more valuable to them. They know exactly what they're getting. And so that's something to bear in mind too. You don't necessarily have to offer discounts to your loyal guests because they're getting something that only you have for them, which is a trusted property and a trusted manager or owner. So there's a lot to think about here, and hopefully I agree with everything that Julie and Andrew said. Hopefully some of this gives you some ideas for how to think about merchandising.
No, this was great. And the session we did earlier in the week, we talked about price elasticity, and in the training, we talk about that too, to what you said, Alex, if there's no demand, changing price isn't necessarily going to, help you find that guest to stay, right? So you've just left money on the table for no reason, or there's a race to the bottom in a market, which is also never good. But the purpose of this was that whole, how does the technology all work? But I love that you just came back to some of the fundamentals of, how to think about the consumer, how to drive repeat business. We talk about the pricing components, or what gives you pricing power, in the last one too, which is great. So for those of you on the line who want to dive into that, we do have some other material in the last expert Q&A we did. I love that conversation too. With that, we do have a few minutes for questions, but a lot of this information is on the Astro website to learn more. And of course, if you want to take the course, join and you'll have access. So these 1-week power courses are every quarter, and they're free to members. So these courses will keep evolving too as new information emerges. This is an ever-changing space, as we all know. Exciting time to be in short-term and vacation rental. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and come back over here to see you guys. So someone did ask the question, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to give a quick plug. So I've known Heather a long time. She's fantastic at what she does. I definitely recommend revenue management. Revenue management is kind of an infinitely deep field. And Heather's seen it from a whole bunch of different angles. So just want to say what a great person to learn from. And, I've appreciated learning from you over the years.
I did not pay you to say that. Appreciate it. Appreciate the note.
We'll talk later.
It's fun for me, right? It's nerding out, but I like to say revenue management and pricing is sexy, not nerdy. Also,
Andrew doesn't know Disneyland's closed right now.
Yeah. I do want to try to. Oh, so Andrew, you did answer the question here in the chat about platforms being connected to marketplaces. So if you missed it in the last session, for owners, we've seen owners do different things. So like they could take the revenue management system without a PMS, right? And say, I just want to go right from my RMS and distribute that price directly to Airbnb and VRBO. I'm not worried about having my own booking engine right now. Maybe is like one of, a reason to get a PMS. Or I have a PMS, and now I'm connecting the RMS to the PMS and then distributing to channels. Val, maybe I'll just go around the room. Do all of you connect directly to, if I don't want a PMS, do all of you connect directly to VRBO and Airbnb? And do you also connect, and if yes to those two, do you connect to even additional channels? And maybe I can start with you, Julie.
Yeah, so we do, we offer connections with, over 30 different PMSs, but we also offer connections directly to Airbnb, VRBO, and most recently Booking.com, which is growing in its volume in the US. It's really big over in Europe.
Okay, thanks. And then Alex, do you do that as well, or do you mostly do PMS?
We do
owner?
both as well. I would say if you're an owner, I would, if you're not using something at all like a PMS, I would just suggest you look at that. I mean, there's some really lightweight ones like Smart B&B and some newer players that are really affordable, and they automate a lot of things that you don't need to do every day, like communicating and asking for payments and things like that. So yes, you can connect directly, but if you're serious about this and want to save some time, I definitely recommend at least looking at a few of the options out there.
We had another RMS provider say the same thing, almost to the effect of like, actually do the PMS first. And figure out what capabilities you need. And the idea, like you said, thinking in terms of they're offering more than the connectivity, the consolidation of like guest communication or payment.
Yeah, and they're great Facebook groups for owners. And
Andrew.
Yeah, we connect directly with Airbnb Advisor and a bunch of PMSs as well. And are soon adding a channel manager that'll basically get us to, there's a whole long tail of marketplaces you could theoretically sell on. But if you're selling on the main US ones, you're going to be in good shape. That's Booking, Expedia / Vrbo, and Airbnb.
Yeah. Well, I know we're at time, so any final thoughts, Julie?
No, I really appreciated the conversation. It was great to meet you, Alex, Andrew, and Heather, and I look forward to continuing this. And thanks everyone who joined. It's been a great hour.
Anything to add, Andrew?
Can't say it better than that. Thanks so much,
Alex.
Thank you. It's been great. Hope this has been helpful for everybody.
Yeah, appreciate your time, and this will be recorded and available for at least the next 12 months. So thanks for that, and have a good one, everyone. We'll talk to you again soon.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
bye.
bye.